Hello, Garland Nixon here, and as it looks like the Ukraine Neocon project is about to come to a screeching halt, I think we need to talk about what happens post conflict and what it all means. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I think we need to maybe prematurely, I'm not sure, possibly prematurely, but as I see the Ukraine conflict winding down, shall we say, I think it's time to start talking post conflict, to start talking about geopolitical international philosophy. What people's plans are, how they see the world, how this affects the direction that things are going as far as the world order. And I think it's critical. So let's start here. As I've said in my recent video, I think we're down to weeks, realistically. As you probably know, the U.S. Congress seems to be unable to come up with a plan to provide further economic aid, military aid, etc., to Ukraine, to their proxy. And that can only mean one thing for Ukraine, which is they got to call the Russians and work out a deal. Now, the Russians could not answer the phone. They don't need to answer the phone. They're winning. And if you know that your opponents are going to run out of food, they're going to run out of weapons, they're going to run out of ammunition, you can just play that out. I mean, of course, the Russians, if you've been following it, the Russians are now saying louder than ever, look, we're ready for to talk. We're ready to go to a third country. We're ready to whatever, we're ready to talk. So they're taking the moral high ground, right? What they're saying is, yeah, we know these guys are about to run out of ammo. We know they're about to be in a bad way, and we're willing to talk. And to be quite frank, if you are going to negotiate with someone, that's a pretty good time to negotiate. You know what I mean? When your adversary is, looking over their shoulder and ain't nothing coming. No food, no water, no weapons, no nothing. No more of the wonder weapons. No more of the M777s are coming. The Leopard 1s, 2s, and 3s are on the way. F-16s will be here any day. All that stuff it's all coming down the pike. Won't be long now, right? That day is done, went on by. And so now the Ukrainians are just looking over their shoulders. They don't see nothing but like some 16-year-old girls and some 70-year-old guys hobbling towards the front lines. What's that mean? I think that the Congress, I'll put it to you like this, because here's the big thing that's driving everything. Recent information out of DC shows that Congress will be likely unable to provide further funding for Ukraine, which will end the Neocon Ukraine project. It appears to me, I'm taking this position until we see further, that is in fact going to happen. It could change. Congress could suddenly do an about face and say we're giving them X amount of billions of dollars. But right now, let's go with it doesn't change, because it appears to me, to be quite frank, if you think about it, what happens January 1st, we're in full election season. I think the Republicans wisely, as I said, I hate both parties. But I think from a strategic perspective, the Republicans have looked at this and they said, look, it's obvious that the Democrats are trying to keep this thing on life support till after the election. Ideally, what the Democrats want to do is feed enough weapons to the Ukrainians, get them to dig in, allow this thing to keep going until after the election, ideally win the election, and then call the Ukrainians and say, you're screwed. This thing's over. Sorry, we don't have to fake anybody out anymore. We won the election, so hey, screw you. Sucks to be you. And that seems to, it seems reasonable to assume that that's the Democrats' plan. Since I can probably figure that out, I suspect the Republicans can figure that out. And so they took this position. If we're going to lose, let me add two things. And a lot of people have thought about this from a political perspective, because You know, here in the empire, everything's driven by domestic politics. Number one, if you're the Republicans, you're saying if Biden loses this, that means he's lost Afghanistan. He's lost before in all intents and purposes. If it was the whole scam of Afghanistan's over, but they're going to say he lost Afghanistan, he lost Ukraine, he lost 2 foreign wars on his watch. He's done, right? But there's something else you have to take into consideration. If you're the Republicans and the wind is at your back and it looks like you're going to win, right? If you feel like we're going to win, I think we're going to get this thing. We're going to probably get the White House and we got a chance of getting both houses of Congress. So we'll have everything, right? But if you're the Republicans, you don't want this turd on your back when you come to power, right? The big part being, if you can slam the Democrats with it as quickly as possible and say, my God, they lost Ukraine. It was a debacle, a total and complete debacle. Everything they did was wrong. Number one. Number two, you get this thing over with now, so it's all long gone. Well, as it starts to crumble in January and you're running for office, you beat the hell out of them with it. You grab that loss, you grab the, that Ukrainian victory, and the Russian victory in Ukraine, and you beat domestic politics. You beat the crap out of the Democrats with that for the entire electoral season. Number one. Number two, if you win and you think you're going to win, you don't want to come to power with this thing still going on, because then it's yours. So if you're the Republicans, you got to get rid of this before you come to power. And let me add this. If it's still going on, the Democrats will run and say, we're doing it. And they can ask you, what are you going to do when you come to power? Are you going to cut off the money? Are you going to let Putin win? So if it's still going on during the electoral season, to some extent, the Democrats can use it against you. And you know that if you take power and it's still going on, it's your baby. And then the Democrats are going to say, well, it was fine as long as we were in power, but as soon as the Republicans came in, they screwed it up, right? So if you're the Republicans, you have every incentive to end it as quickly as possible in a major flop, because you know it's going to be a major flop, and then take that flop and beat the bloody hell out of the Democrats for the next year with it. They're losers. They lost. Putin kicked their ass. The Taliban ran them out. Oh, they're done, right? And at some point, you're going to probably add Hamas on it. And Hamas, slapped them in the teeth a couple times. Strategically, politically speaking, it makes sense for the Republicans to end this thing as soon as possible. And they got a nice weapon against the Democrats, and it was going to lose anyway. Okay. So I doubt very seriously if the Republicans will fund it. It makes sense to me. If I were running the Republicans, I'd say, let this thing die as quickly as possible, and off we'll go to attack the Democrats with it. Right. Okay. That's number one. But at that point, so that's domestic politics. All makes sense. Very logical. Now, let's go to international politics and to some extent domestic politics. Here's why. The neocons have a plan, but the neocons are not all of the ruling elite. They represent a portion of the ruling elite, but they don't represent all of the ruling elite, right? So the portion of the ruling elite that's represented by the neocons, their plan is to maintain complete world domination, which they've already lost, but that's their plan, right? And that plan, the most important part of that plan, the critical part of that plan, is to stop a rising powers. And a big one is Russia. You've got to stop Russia, and you've got to separate Russia from Europe, because unfortunately the Europeans don't understand it. The neocons view China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, I can name up to a few others, but the EU, they see them also as a threat. So all of the powers that they feel that they must arrest, that they must contain, of all the powers, the EU is the only one that's suckers enough to, sit in the same room with them, right? Okay, and to do their bidding. So the lucky thing for them is they were successful in destroying the EU economically, and the EU is not coming back anytime soon. It's just going to continue in a downward spiral for some period. I do suspect what will have to happen for the EU to have any changes whatsoever will be a change in the ruling elite class. Will have to be a different faction of the ruling elite will have to take over. Do I have any hope for revolution, in some kind of a revolution from the bottom in Europe? It would be nice. it would be in the best interests of the Europeans to have a revolution so they could, pick their own leaders, so they could choose their own direction. But I don't see that happening right now. But in the more immediate future, I see them going to a different faction of the ruling elite. They're get screwed anyway, but maybe not as bad, huh? That may try to pull them out, and their only hope is to go back to Russian. Cheap Russian energy. And if they have a faction of the ruling elite that's smart enough to do that, then they'll do it. I think that one of the other things, since we're talking about Europe, before we move on, is that there is a conversation that appears to be going on amongst the ruling elite in Europe. And it's been going on with Macron for some time. Because when Macron said, well, I'll put it like this, Macron has said, we need a European army. Recently, some of the power brokers in Germany have been saying Germany needs to get nukes. What are they saying? What they're saying is this: we are junior imperial powers, right? We are subservient to the big dog, which is the United States. But that ain't working out for us. The United States has dragged us into this disaster and screwed us totally. The U.S. is cannibalizing us and stealing our industry, selling us energy for 7 times the price. They're just making complete monkeys out of us, right? And I think there's going to be a faction of the ruling elite that it's not that they want revolutionary change, but what they're going to say is we want to be an empire, but we want to be our own empire. We'll let the United States be, it's obvious there's going to be new poles. There's going to be new poles of power in the world. And I think there's a faction of the ruling elite in Europe that's saying, rather than be a part of the United States, it's a declining power. It is an arbitrary and capricious power that can't be trusted. They blew up our damn infrastructure. They're treating us like crap, and they're stealing our stuff. And I think there's a faction of the ruling elite that says we want to be the European empire. We want our own nukes. We want our own, they know they don't need nukes to protect themselves from Russia because they know Russia's not going to attack them, but they want their own nukes as a symbol. To have their own nukes would symbolize that they're free. The nukes aren't really, in a philosophical way, in a kinetic way, the nukes wouldn't be aimed at Russia. In a philosophical way, the nukes would be aimed at the U.S. empire, basically saying we're free from you bastards, because the U.S. empire occupies them. And if the European faction of the ruling elite that wants to free itself from the U.S. grip clutches and be one of several empires in the world as they see it, one of the things they'll have to do is kick the U.S. bases out, because these aren't bases of assistance, right? These are bases of occupation. And as long as they're occupied lands, they'll have no chance of doing that. But the bottom line is, bottom line, for those who are hoping for some kind of European revolution from the bottom, I suspect the European ruling elite class is going in a very different direction. They want to be their own individual empire. But they got a problem. Because the problem is, in the same way that the global South will no longer allow the United States to just prey on them, the French Empire to prey on them, the Africans, the Latin Americans, they've had enough. In the same way that's not going to go down for the U.S. They're not going to be able to be a junior empire and go around the world and do what the U.S. empire was doing. See, that's what they think. Well, France probably thinks, yes, we'll get this U.S. Army military, this EU military together, and then we can go back and take Niger and of these kinds of countries. The bottom line is Russia, China, and local alliances in the so-called third world are not going to allow you to come in and do that anymore. Those days are over. Not going to work. So Europe has machinations. It has designs to be one of the world poles of power, but the predatory nature of European colonialism is no longer going to work in a world that's multipolar, in a world that has economic alliances that could easily translate into military alliances, such as BRICS, right? Okay, now, what I'm saying when I say Europe is Europe thinking about doing a European army, or kind of the United States of Europe kind of thing, being their own empire, because one thing's obvious: the Neocon plan, right? We're going to surround Russia, we're going to squeeze them, we're going to intimidate them, and we're going to get so many weapons and missiles and stuff around them that we squeeze them out, and that they have no safety and security. We're going to violate all their safety and security to the point where they're intimidated, and they have to do what we want, right? So we're surrounding them with bases, and then we're going to humiliate them, and we're going to weaponize everything around them, right? So that was the plan for Russia. And here's the truth: Russia knew it. They knew it. And I think what Russia did was they waited until they had the sufficient economic and military power to resist. Now, they made a few moves early. They were not going to give up their bases in Syria. So when the U.S. tried to overthrow the bases in Syria, the Russians put some planes in there, put some troops in there, went into Syria, and did what they needed to do to stop that. And subsequently, Russia is arming a number of their allies now: Iran, North Korea, etc. They're arming they're arming these guys to the teeth. So the bottom line is, so the neocons, right? Of course, what are they going to do? They said contain Russia and China. What they really mean is tear them up, break them up, destroy them, wipe them out, get regime change, get a compliant regime in there ultimately, and steal all their stuff. That was the plan: world domination. Because once they own Russia and China, the rest of the world folds, right? So that was the neocon plan. Well, they got as far as they could with Russia. Russia allowed them to get as far as Russia was going to allow them to get. I think what triggered the conflict with Russia was two things. Number one, Russia felt that they were strong enough to fight now. Number two, they felt that they were backed into a corner to a point where they had to fight, right? Because at the beginning of this conflict, it seems to me that the U.S. instigated it, because the last few days before the conflict, the Ukrainian troops were firing a lot of rounds, more so rounds than ever, at the Russian speakers. And it seems to me, to some extent, that there was an intent to bait the Russians into attacking. I don't think they thought that the Russians would be able to do as much damage as they can. They would be as dominant as they are. I don't think they thought the Russians would be as resilient as they are economically. And I think they thought that they had armed the Ukrainians and they would be able to hold up against the Russians better than they were able to. And the Russians were very smart. They're not stupid, and they got a lot of allies. And so when they went after Russia, naturally China knew, hey man, we're next. So China propped Russia up economically. I think India looked at it, and India said, hey, we can get cheap oil. And, and India has a very, very long-standing good relationship with Russia. So I think the Indians took advantage of the situation to get lots of cheap resources from Russia, and they got a long, good relationship with Russia. They weren't going to break that for the United States, because nobody really trusts the neocons, and the Indians kind of knew that they'd be on the menu at some point. So whatever the case, Russia's friends were many, and their friends came to their rescue and aid as necessary. Russia made smart, wise moves. Russia has the economic wherewithal to hold itself up in a difficult position, and they seem to have flourished. So their attempt to weaken Russia completely boomeranged. Now, the other thing was that it caused great damage to their so-called allies and their relationships, and the U.S. relationship around the world. When countries were forced to choose between Russia and China or the U.S., they all just seems like the entire global South chose Russia and China. So the U.S. and its allies, and it lost their access in Africa, right? And they tried to squeeze people, and it didn't work. So they lost access in the global South to the max. The fact that Vladimir Putin stood up against the big bully, U.S. bully, made him a champion to some, right? A lot of people. What's interesting is we started seeing in Africa, everywhere, man, everywhere in Africa, every time four people got together to march against something, they had a picture of Putin and a Russian flag. Why? Because Russia became symbolic to Africa. The United States has been the big bully in Africa, in the global South, for now decades and decades, if not centuries. And when somebody punched back, he became a big hero. He was like a superhero to the Africans. Somebody is finally punching back against the U.S. Let's keep an eye on that. And ultimately, it looks like the Russians will be victorious, and Putin will be. I mean, it'll be like they'll like having a picture of Jesus up over there, a mantle. Everybody at home, they're going to worship the. I mean, I'm saying that to be facetious, but he will be a hero in the global South. He'll be the guy that broke the big monster, the dragon that was breathing fire all over him. He'll be, Saint George that slayed the dragon. And that's the way the global South is going to see this. The Americans don't understand that, but the global South will certainly see this. Additionally, I think that there's going to be some consequences in the United States because domestically, the neocons, I would say really came to power they started to come to power in the Clinton administration. They really came to power in the Bush administration, and they're in their heyday. From say 2004 through now 2024, that 20-year period, that's a 20-year period where the neocons really made the decisions here and dragged us into holy hell for a 20-year period. But I do think that the failure that they're going to experience and the humiliation that the United States will experience in Russia may cause some factions of the ruling elite in the United States to start questioning the neocons' plan, question the neocon ideology, question the neocon competency. Clearly, when you look at the kind of people they got, the Tony Blinkens and the Bidens of the world, they're unthinkably incompetent, right? So I think that it will be interesting to see whether or not the neocons lose their status in the U.S. foreign policy establishment. Certainly there will always be some neocon ideology there. Certainly the arrogance, etc., is not in the best interest of the U.S., and it ain't going to completely go away. But the aggressiveness of the neocons and the plan for just complete and total world domination is going to take a hit for this reason. And it's got to take a hit for this reason. Remember, what was this all about? It was all about, very simply, all about, we're going to go and we're going to drag Russia into this thing, and we're going to weaken Russia. We're going to make Russia very weak, broke, poor. We're going to take Russia out, then we're going after China. We're going to isolate Russia on the world stage. Well, everything went in the wrong direction. Russia is militarily, they've had a chance to hone their skills, to create new technology, to work with other countries, North Korea, Iran, to strengthen their supply lines, both internally and externally, right? So their supply lines. Now, the U.S. would run around and say, can we please get some shells from you? Can we please, we got some stored in South Korea. Israel, can we get some of you from it? What the Russians appear to do is to establish solid supply lines, right? Iran's got drones. We'll get drones from Iran, and we will take those drones and we will get license from Iran, and we will adjust those drones and make them even better with our technological ability, right? We'll get shells from North Korea, maybe help North Korea to build more shells, maybe build more factories in Russia. North Koreans can come there and work and get a job and make money. So they're not just strengthening their supply lines and their ability to their industrial military production capabilities, but they're building consistent, reliable supply lines that are external to their country. Very reliable allies that need the money, that need the power and alliance of a powerful nuclear Russia, that where things can go both ways. Hey, you give me shells and I'll help you get that satellite in the air, North Korea. You give me shells, you give me drones, Iran, and how would you like to get a squadron of Su-35s and some attack copters, right? So they're going to, Iran, North Korea, they're going to end up with some of the best military technology in the world. And they've got some pretty good technology of their own. And Russia ends up strengthening its external supply lines and, of course, strengthening its alliances for a defensive front. So they can build a front from the Middle East all the way to Asia, a defensive military front of allies. So if the United States tries to, act a monkey, they got a lot of friends in a lot of places. Bases they can work out of, all kinds of things that they can do, allies all over the place. So they're setting themselves up to be able to through their allies. See, the U.S. says, okay, we got subs and we got Navy craft stuff all over the world, so we can get at you anywhere. Where Russia will say, we have built alliances. So in the Middle East, we may not have the power there, but hey, Iran's our buddy. In Asia, look right off the coast of Japan, Philippines, take a look around. You see North Korea over there? Yeah, they're armed to the teeth and they're our buddy. And China's our buddy here. And boom, so they built alliances. So Russia has not only strengthened itself from a perspective of new military technology and hardware and increased industrial military production, they've also strengthened themselves because they've increased their alliances, both economic and military alliances, to build a front from the Middle East to Asia. And they're arming their allies, so they're bringing their allies' technical and military capabilities up to a level where they can effectively defend themselves and act in an assertive and offensive manner against the U.S. if things would break out in a manner that would be necessary. So it's allowed Russia to really build up. It's also allowed Russia to build up its allies and re-establish its alliances in Africa. And now the African, the Burkina Faso, a poor country, a lot of people don't have electricity. I don't know if you know it, Russia's building a nuclear power plant there. And if you don't have electricity, what happens? Why would you build a huge power plant there? Because next you're going to build industry. You got to have a power plant. A lot of those countries, they don't have the infrastructure to run a factory, to run a refinery, to run the kind of things they need to run, because you got to have infrastructure. So Russia comes in, the Burkina Faso, they put in this huge nuclear power plant. Now they can electrify the towns and villages so people can live a better lifestyle. And additionally, you can start building factories and refineries, and now you can build the infrastructure out that needs electricity. And of course, they get this big thing. Some of the local countries that are close by, they can sell electricity to them, and they can make money off of that. So the bottom line is, it is Russia and China setting up the infrastructure in Africa now. Russia being a part of that, China being a huge part of it, but building the infrastructure in Africa, which does two things. It allows the Africans to get stronger economically. So guess what they can do? They can buy Russian and Chinese goods, can't they? They can provide goods to Russia and China. They can do business with Russia and China. And now what's next? Now, as they get stronger, they can buy military hardware. They can buy military goods. They can strengthen their defensive abilities. And the U.S. and France, et cetera, can't come back in and take that country over. If they got Su-35s and missiles and all kinds of stuff now to defend themselves, and maybe satellites in the sky and all that. So Russia is clearly Russia and China, particularly Russia, is strengthening their alliances and strengthening their allies militarily, economically, as a big front, a long front across the world, so that they don't have to be an empire. They can use alliances as opposed to having their own bases and missiles and planes all over the place. They can have friends all over the place that'll help them. And of course, it makes it much more difficult to use economic coercion against Russia if they got friends all over the world that's buying and selling stuff from them, right? So Russia is becoming much stronger on the world stage, much more powerful on the world stage. And might I add, as people think about it, you're an investor. As you realize that the U.S. empire came after Russia economically with everything they had, and it couldn't stop them, where are you going to invest your money? See, the investors are looking at Russia saying, what do you want if you're an investor? You want your money to be safe, right? And what do you happen? Let's say I give you $1,000 and you put it in a safe. And I say, well, I don't know, somebody can break that safe open. You come up and you shoot that safe with a tank, doesn't dent it. You pour gasoline over it. You've set it on fire, doesn't do anything to it. You drop grenades all around it. You blow it to smithereens, right? A tractor trailer runs over it. A D9 Caterpillar runs over it, doesn't even dent the safe. And then you open the door to the safe. Here's your $1,000 back. I say, I trust that safe, right? That's what if you're putting your money somewhere, if you're investing somewhere, you look at Russia and that's safe. You're like, geez, they got attacked by the United States neocons. The U.S. empire went after Russia with everything they had and couldn't dent them, couldn't even hurt them. For God's sake, Russia's tough. I'm putting my money there because it's going to be safe, because nobody's going to be able to take it. Nobody's going to be able to come to Russia and get it because they're strong. So they have solidified their position as a safe investment that can defend and protect your investments if you invest them in Russia. That's the reality. They have, look, when you can determine two things when it comes to investments, right? Number one, if I'm going to invest in your country, I got to know two things: that your economy is reliable, that it's not so corrupt that they'll get stolen, right? So the money will be safe there. It's reliable. It is not so corrupt that the money's going to disappear, right? I got to know that your economy is strong and it's not going to just go under on any given day, that it's a solid economy. Russia's proven that. And last but not least, that you got a military that can defend it. That if I give you my gold to hold, if somebody comes and says, all right, I'm taking the gold, that you can defend it. You can defend my gold. Now I'm going to keep my gold in your country. You're stable, so it's not going to go under. You're not corrupt, so I can get it back anytime I want to. Your military strong, so if somebody else comes in and take my gold, you can protect it. That's what Russia has proven, all of those things. So everybody's going to want to invest in Russia simply because it's safe. Capital flows to a safe investment. So Russia's going to be a safe investment. Right now, if you're buying treasury bonds for the US, they're up to their ears in debt. Or if you're buying rubles or something like that, if you're building something in Russia, where are you going to put your money? In Russian gas or Russian natural resources, where are you going to put your money? I put my money in Russian gas or Russian natural resources because them treasury bonds may not be worth a crap soon. They ain't worth much now. So they won from they completely won from that perspective. And moving forward, and this is the big one. This is the big part of it. This is the big thing. The Neocon plan was to take Russia out, then take China out, then rule the world. When they went to take Russia out, it boomeranged and hit them right between the friggin' eyes, right between the running lights, right? So now Russia is stronger than ever, and the US is weaker than ever. So if the plan was to rule the world and it was world hegemony, that plan is over. I mean, let's face it, the foundation of the Neocon plan, the Wolfowitz doctrine, is we're always going to have superiority. The Russians, we started a fracas. The Russians stepped up to the plate. We started some trouble figuring, man, the Russians may or may not come into this, but we think they will. We drew the Russians into the fight. The Russians came into the fight, and they were ready to fight. And they did what they needed to do, and they're going to walk away victorious, as I see it. And at that point, the whole Neocon, the foundation of the Neocon plan is world domination. Ain't no world domination. You've strengthened Russia. So now, how are you going to dominate the world when you can't get past Vladimir Putin? You stepped up to the plate. You said, Vladimir Putin, what are you going to do? We're coming into Ukraine. In a nutshell, Putin said, that's my front lawn. Get off my lawn. You got to get off my lawn. I'm willing to negotiate and talk with you, but you're not going to be able to hang out on my lawn and point guns at me. And the U.S. empire said, yeah, you will do whatever we want, anywhere we want. There's nothing you can do about it. And Putin basically said, okay, well, I guess we're going to fight. Let's dance. And the U.S. said, great. You'll attack us. We'll use these poor schmucks in Ukraine. We'll throw their bodies at you, and we'll use all of the other coercions and economic we can to destroy you. That didn't work. The whole plan is shot, gone, done, and far worse because now they got trouble in the Middle East and they don't know what the hell to do there. They're back. They just lost one war in the Middle East, a year or two ago in August, and now they're setting themselves up to lose the second. And in a nutshell, the Neocon plan is finished. It's done. What do you do now? What if it's like, okay, what's the plan? All right. First, we're going to go get some water. We're going to go in town like it's a zombie apocalypse. The zombie apocalypse. You've all seen them. And there's a band of survivors. And they're like, what are we going to do? There's zombies anywhere. And they're out at an old farmhouse. They say, look, first, we don't have water. We're going to go in town. There's a store in there. We'll sneak through the zombies. We'll go into the store. We'll get ourselves a couple cases of water and put them in a wagon. And we can pull the wagons behind us with the water and food and supplies. And then we'll go on to, I know a guy that has a boat out on the coast, and we'll take that boat out to an island. They always got a boat in an island. That's, for some reason, zombie movies, that's the thing to do. Get on a boat, go to the island, and of course there's zombies on the island waiting for you. But all that being said, so what are you going to do? Plan A. In order for us to make it there, it's a 2-day walk. We got to have food and water or we're going to die. So we go to town. And we look at the town. We're up on a mountain. We got our binoculars. All right, we got to go in town and get the look. And it's loaded, crawling with zombies. Everywhere there's zombies in that town. So what are we going to do? Well, we know we can't go into town and get food and water. So let's come up with a second plan. Because plan A is done. There's too many zombies. You go in there, you're going to get eaten. right? That's out. Getting water, going to the coast to the boat, that ain't going to work. We're going to now, what we have to do is figure out basic survival, how we're going to get food and water, right? Your plan is thwarted. Well, if your plan is to take out Russia and then go on to take out the rest of the world, your plan is thwarted. Your plan for world domination is done. Because even, let's just say you were able to execute some other part of the plan. Well, okay, Russia couldn't take them out. Let's go after this other country. No matter what you do, Russia's still there. You're never going to be dominant of the world. You're going to be like, haha, we told everybody what to do. And Putin's going to be like standing next to you. We're running the world. We took Africa, blah, blah, blah. And Putin's going to be sitting there next to you, tapping you on the shoulders. Yes, sirree. We won. We took everybody. And he's just tapping. You're going to, yes, sirree. And you're going to turn around. There's Vladimir Putin. Not quite all of the world, buddy. Not quite all of the world. Because you know, the neocons know at this point. You tried him. You tried Putin. You tried the Russians. You tried the first part of your plan. You couldn't get in town. You couldn't get in to get the water and food. The part, that intricate, important part of your plan to make it to the coast has been thwarted. You need a new plan. Your plan was for world domination, and you had to get Russia under your boot in order to get world domination. You ain't getting Russia under your boot. You ain't getting Russia under your boot today, not tomorrow, not now, not ever, never. And even worse, you're isolated. Everybody's pissed at you over Israel. I mean, talk about from bad to worse. You didn't just lose to a war to the Russians, which you lost a war to the Russians, but now the world's pissed at you, including your own people. Even in your own country, a lot of people here, the majority of the people, I'll put it like this. I saw 76% of Democrats, 76% want listen to what I'm going to say, a poll, 76% of Democrats want a permanent ceasefire. You know what that's called? That's called an end to the war. A permanent ceasefire. Yes, they want a permanent ceasefire. That's called peace, my friends. That's called peace. 76% of Biden's party says we want peace. We want peace. We're done with this. We don't like what you're doing. You're dragging us into war, and now you're killing children like they're mice. We ain't having that. So now you lost the war to Afghan guys in sandals and Toyota trucks. You went up against, and you probably should have taken a lesson from that, right? Guys in Toyota trucks beat you. If you can't beat a bunch of guys in Toyota trucks, you probably shouldn't go up against the Russian army, but some people just don't get it. They went up against the Russian army, and the Russian army did what the Russian army does. It did what it does. It exhausted its enemy. Slowly, 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 it punched. It just threw in mortars, threw in rockets, threw in bombs day after day, week after week, month after month. The Russian army did what they did to Napoleon. They did what they did to Hitler. They did what they do to everybody. They're fierce warriors, and they're patient warriors. And they go in, and they're very, very tactically sound. And they have great leadership, military leadership, and they came up with a plan, and they executed that plan slowly and deliberately, as the Russians tend to do. And that, as it always tends to with the Russians, that plan is bringing them victory. And so now the neocons will plan for world domination. Let's face it. Let's put it where it is. It's over. It is over. I know it's over. You know it's over. The Russians know it's over. The Chinese know it's over. The Africans, everybody knows. Hey, man, you stepped up to Putin and he put foot in your butt. You know what I mean? You stepped up to Putin. Everybody knows. Let's just simplify it. Everybody knows, what this was going down. The Russians were like, we're going to step up to Putin. And Putin was like, you're going to step up to me. Okay, let's do this. You stepped up to Putin. Oh, he's terrible. He's evil. He's the most worst person that ever lived. He's a demon. He's Hitler reincarnated. He's the great Satan, blah, blah, blah. You let loose your public relations machine, NAFO trolls on Twitter. You used every machination you could, and you said every bit of economic coercion, every sanction, everything you had. And you're scaring people, and we got to stop Putin now, or there'll be no democracy. And he'll take all of Europe. You used every soft power, hard power, medium power, everything that you had, you used and went after Putin. and he took every shot and knocked your ass out on the canvas. Let's face it, that's the way the world's going to. That's the way I view it. He took all the punches and knocked you out. And now the way I usually say it is Russia. I don't say Putin. I say Russia did this, Russia did that. But all I'm going to say this: the neocons context is Putin. So if they want to use that context, I'll use their context. Their context is we're going to knock Putin out. So I'll use that context. You swung on him and he kicked your ass. You swung on him. You stepped up to him. He said, don't mess with me. Don't push me. Don't touch me. And you swung on him. And he knocked you out. And he's going to keep on rolling. And now, post the SMO conflict, Ukraine is on Russia's border. Ukraine is going to be in a position where they got to negotiate with Russia. They're going to have to negotiate with Russia. And let me tell you, in case you haven't figured out how the negotiations are going to go. The negotiations are going to go like this. Russia's going to write up the terms of an unconditional surrender and put them in the hands of the Ukrainians and say, well, you don't have to sign them now. Because you know what? Because all along the battlefield, you guys are running out of stuff. And your people are running out of gas. Your people are running out of everything. So here's the unconditional surrender. That's our terms. Just sign that part right there that says, I surrender. And we're laying down our guns and we're going to capitulate to whatever the Russians want. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. That's where they are. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. You got 80-year-old guys and 16-year-old girls on the front lines. Do you really want to get up for all of them to die just for you to sign that unconditional surrender anyway? It's up to you. You can always call Joe Biden. Maybe he'll send you some troops. Good luck with that. Right? So bottom line is the Ukrainians are going to have to do that. In fact, let me show you something. Our boy, in case you haven't seen this, I think it's something you ought to see. Alexei Arestovich. He is a former mouthpiece. Let's see if I can get it. Let's see if, oh, darn it. That might be gone. Let me see if I can. So he recently made a point. Okay, let me see if I can find it. It might be gone by now. Here we go. Let's look at this. He's the former yappy mouth bastard from Kiev. And now let's see what he has to say. He's on Twitter. And okay, here we go. Let's go here. He's on Twitter. And read the bottom.
Коля, знаешь, в чем самая главная трагедия наша? Что, по-моему, в конфликте глобалистов и реалистов мы сделали ставку не на тех. Мы как бы пролили кровь для того, чтобы оказаться в лагере проигрывающей стороны. Пока я вижу президента Германии, который прилетел в Катар. Коля, знаешь?
Now, I want you to look at what he just said. He just said, I'm going to read it, right? Kolya, do you know what our most important tragedy
В чем самая главная трагедия наша? Что, по-моему,
in my opinion, in the conflict between globalists and realists, we meet, how do you put it?
Мы как бы пролили кровь для того, чтобы оказаться в лагере проигрывающей стороны.
Of the losing side. This game's over. This is Alexei Arestovich. This is the guy who was the propagandist for Kiev, which shows he knew all along. But what did he say? What did he say? Man, we got the globalists and the realists. The globalists being, the Bidens and Blinkens and Sunaks and all that kind of stuff, right? And he's like, you know what? We bet on the wrong horse, bro. We're on the wrong side. Remember something I said, that when it comes out, I've said this from the very beginning, when it's all over, the people in Ukraine will say, all right, who's the power person here? That's who's the sheriff in town now. And whoever that is, that's who we're going to be down with. So if he says, man, we picked the wrong side, then you think he's the only one? You think he's the only person in Kiev that says we picked the wrong side? You think all of them aren't looking? I watched a video the other day, and there was somebody interviewing a guy in Kiev, just a schmuck on the street. And they asked this guy, if you could go back 10 years, what would you say? And he said, I tell people don't gather in the Maidan Square. In other words, he's looking backwards saying, same thing. We picked the wrong horse, man. We shouldn't have bet on these suckers. They got us killed. They got us beaten up. They got us broke. This was a bad move. And now he's looking at it and he's saying, man, you know what? We should have went with Putin here, Bob, because it looks like he's doing the ass kicking and the name taking, and these other people are hightailing and running. But let's see what's on the rest of this. Let's do this. Let's see what else he has to say. We'll look at the rest of old Alexei. So far, I see the president of Germany who flew to Qatar and who was forgotten to meet. Let's do this. Let me kill the sound, so I'll read it to you. So he says the president of Germany flies to Qatar, and he says forgotten to meet. In other words, he got to Qatar, and there was nobody at the airport. They left him standing in his plane for 30 minutes, right? So he says, I see the president of Germany who flew to Qatar and who was forgotten to meet. He did not leave the plane for half an hour while the Qatar protocol service portrayed something. And they tell us about the isolation of Putin. In my opinion, let me find this again. On the international arena, the isolation of Putin. Let me see. Oh, okay, here we go. He says, and he says Putin was met with a horse. Why does Putin deserve that? In case you don't, the terribly isolated Putin is performing on the G20 and all other places, and he is also diplomatically isolated. And the Times now says whether to appoint him as a person of the year. He is seriously considered. What kind of war, what kind of democracy, what values are we talking about? It does not seem to me that we have connected with the 10th company. I begin to ask such questions. So what is this guy saying? He says, we bet on Biden and these clowns, right? Let me get rid of this. Sorry about that. Got to get rid of this. So now Zelensky's former advisor is saying, they told us that Putin was isolated. He goes to Qatar. They meet him with horses and carriages. Putin went to the UAE. When he got there, they did a flyover of planes. When President Putin, I think it was today or yesterday, when he landed at the United Arab Emirates, they did a flyover of planes with the Russian flag colors, right? Then they literally had not just a car for him, they had cars, they had carriages with camels and horses and all this decoration. In other words, they made it clear to the world, he's our guy. And they referred to him as a dear friend. So Putin shows up and they're like, my man, Putin, woo! They're high-fiving, they're dancing, they're back slapping, they're doing everything. They're letting pigeons loose. They're unrolling a scroll, a scroll like the old days, and be it proclaimed that one Vladimir Putin is blah blah. You know what I mean? They got some sucker blowing trumpets. I mean, they're going all out to say to the world, Putin's our dude. Meanwhile, what happened a couple weeks ago? Xi Jinping goes to a summit in San Francisco. All these billionaire oligarchs are there. Xi Jinping comes in. They stand up and give him a standing ovation. Right. Bottom line, they won't even answer the phone for Joe Biden, for Genocide Joe. Right. Who's the big dogs now? It ain't Genocide Joe. It ain't the U.S. When they got finished with this, Putin's the big dog, man. Putin goes to countries, and these countries are. He ain't even going to countries in Africa, and they're running around with a Russian flag and a picture of Putin. He lands in the Middle East. They won't talk to Joe Biden. They won't take his call. They can't stand Tony Blinken. Putin walks in, gets off his plane. They're flying friggin' planes over with the Russian colors, camels, carriages, you name it. Come on. It's over. This world domination project is done. It has flopped. It has not only has it failed, it actually was counterproductive. It sped up the end of U.S. hegemony, right? And now what's going on is you got countries that are accustomed to be, I think this too, you got countries that are accustomed to being dominated. And I think those countries are looking at Russia and China and they're saying, hey, man, we're accustomed to being dominated. We know you guys are going to push us around, but we're hoping you'll be a little nicer than the U.S. because we're not very strong, but, you know, the U.S. has been pretty mean and the colonial powers have been pretty mean. Meanwhile, Putin and Xi are saying, man, we don't want that kind of accountability. We no thank you. We do not want to push you around. We do not want to make your decisions for you. We got brother, man, we got problems of our own. We got things we got to deal. That was the US's thing. That ain't our thing. We'll be friends. We'll do business, but don't ask us to come push you around or overthrow your governments or anything like that, because that's not the kind of game we play. We'll come, shake hands, make a deal. We're out of here. So I think part of what happened is, and I think, what is it? Putin was in Saudi Arabia today. Putin is going to the countries in the Middle East. Now, supposedly, I don't know if it's a goodwill tour. He's talking about economics or BRICS or whatever the hell, right? But I have a feeling they're talking about a plan for Gaza. And it won't shock me if when Putin leaves, something shoe drops. It won't shock me if when Putin leaves, there's some kind of oil embargo, something's cut off, the Middle Eastern countries collectively take some kind of an action. It wouldn't surprise me if the Russians weren't stirring up some kind of an action in the Middle East to deal with the Gaza situation, and Putin didn't come through and he's shaking hands saying, all right, guys, let's do it. He's one of the heads of OPEC along with Saudi Arabia. And like I said, the world is looking at Putin now as a big time tough guy who'll fight anybody, who's tough enough to, you know, they feel like we're scared of the US, but if we're friends with Russia, we ain't scared no more. I think that's the way it's going to come across. So now the U.S. is in a bind. I think part of what happened with Ukraine also is this. I got to take this into account. I think they're short of money. I think they ain't got so much money. I think part of it is, yes, you know, the Republicans are taking advantage of a political opportunity in domestic politics, top politics leading up to the elections. Also, I think part of it is this. Israel's taking a lot of stuff. And they got to make some decisions, and they don't have money, but so much money. They don't have but so many weapons, and they're running short. And I think it came to be a decision, and those poor stupid bastards in Ukraine who thought that they were going to be at the front of the line have been pushed to the back of the line, been thrown out of the line. Sorry, guys, we got nothing for you. You were cannon fodder anyway. So what are you griping about? You always knew you were cannon fodder. In fact, we've had some over the course of time. We've had people in Ukraine make statements such as, well, we are fighting the Russians so the Americans and the Europeans don't have to. And I thought, man, you're committing suicide, so those guys don't have to fight, you stupid bastards. But what it came down to was the oligarchs and the people that were saying that were stealing so much money, they were just throwing their own people into the front line so they could steal their hundreds of millions, and they could send their money out to Cyprus through shell companies and through fake crypto exchanges and stuff like that. So whatever the case may be, the guy that said that wasn't dying on the front lines. They were throwing their own people to die on the front lines so they could pilfer every stinking dime of Uncle Sam's money that they could get their hands on. The Biden administration knew it, probably were filling their own pockets, and so they just played this thing to get whatever they could get. You know, Hunter Biden's crack pipe needs to be full. He don't like an empty crack pipe, and you know, as long as he's got his scandals and his scams going on in Ukraine, he can keep that crack pipe full. So that was, you know, an important thing for the neocons. They got to be able to steal their money. But now we will see how much power the neocons maintain after this. I also think this is something that I think I'll throw this in there because I think this is part of the dynamic of the direction of the United States post-Ukraine loss. I think that there's going to be a number of people, probably young people, who run in for Congress against some of these established Democrats who have gone along with the stuff going on in Israel, in Gaza, the attack on Israel, on Gaza. And I think that some of these long-term Democrats will get knocked out. I think there's some people, look, I can't stand both parties. I hate both parties. I despise both parties. And I think they're not even both parties. They're one. They're only one. But I'll say this. If there was somebody running in the state of Maryland against let's say we got a Democrat and he's been in for X amount of years, which we do. and they're pro-genocide, which they are. And some young 28-year-old person says, I'm going to run against Congressman Smithers here, and I'm for free Palestine. I'm for stop the genocide. I'm for holding the genociders accountable, blah, blah, blah. You know me, I can't stand either parties, and I'm not supporting them. But I'd probably vote for that person in the primaries, just to get my revenge, you know, just to get back at these bastards. This to try to make them pay so that whoever got into office the next time would be scared to do it because they know that the voters might come for them. So if I got the opportunity to vote for somebody who was anti-genocide and who was going to try to throw one of these bastards out, I'd probably do it. As sick as I am of this system, I would probably do that, just to try to hold some level of accountability. And just because I'm pissed, I think, just to get some personal revenge. Okay, I know what people are saying. Oh my God, Garland, you'd vote for somebody. I'm only human, man. I got to get some paybacks. I got to get some revenge. And if I could get some revenge for these genocidal bastards, I'd have to consider getting my revenge. Hey, don't hate me, man. I'm human, okay? I got, as Snoop's dog said, I want some get backs every now and then myself, right? But at any rate, that's where I think we are. I think we're in a position where there's a level of desperation. I don't think the neocons are done. Well, I'm not going to say this. They may try something, but I think they're on their back feet really, really bad. And they don't know what to do with this Israel thing, because they're first and foremost imperialists. The empire must be saved. And with Israel being an imperial outpost and, you know, the most important imperial military outpost of the United States, I think that they've got to do everything they can to hold on to it. But in the same way that the Ukrainians got knocked out by the Russians, well, actually in a kind of a very different way. Let me tell you a story. I might have told you this story before, maybe not, but it's a story nonetheless, and it's a true story. I was in 7th grade, and I walked home with a bunch of kids every day. And you know how kids are. Yeah, kids will give each other hell or whatever, right? So there was a kid, and I'll use his name. I'll never forget. He was in the 9th grade. I was in the 7th grade. His name was Danny Michaels. And for whatever reason, he was an asshole. He picked on a little 7th grader, right? So for one day, walking home, I guess somebody decided, I'm not sure how it started. I'm in 7th grade. I'm going to have a fight with Danny Michaels. I'm a 7th grader. I'm way smaller than this kid, right? There's a big difference between a 7th grader and a 9th grader. You know, he's like 15. I'm like 13, right? So I don't know how I end up with a fight with Danny Michaels. We're behind 7-Eleven in the grass. Well, it went on for a while, and all I'll say is I didn't think I won. I got a couple licks in, right? For instance, I think he swung at me and I ducked and I bopped him in the face. I didn't really know how to fight. But I got a punch in here and there. Then he grabbed me and he was bigger than me. And he threw me on the ground. I wrestled around and I think I got another punch in the face. So every now and then, I got in a good lick, whack. And a couple times here and there, I got in a good lick, whack. And I heard the crowd say, ooh, right? Now, I went home. None the best for wear, because I fought a kid way bigger than me. I took some pretty good licks, and I felt as though I lost because I got hit pretty hard. But I knew I got lucky. I got a couple of them, 7th grade, were blind swings. You throw a hand, blap, and you hear it land, But some of sometimes you're not even looking, right? But whatever the case may be. So that was it. That's that story. The story is Garland gets in a fight in 7th grade with a bigger kid in the 9th grade who's much taller than him, bigger than him. Garland goes home feeling like he got beat up, but he got in a few good shots. I come to school the next day, and all through the school, the rumble is Garland beat up Danny Michaels. And that's what everybody says. Man, I heard you beat up Danny Michaels. And that's the whole, everybody. There was no discussion that it could have been a draw, that I could have lost. Everywhere the story was, I beat up Danny Michaels. Now, I knew I didn't really beat up Danny Michaels, but I learned something. And what I learned was I was a little kid. I didn't have to beat up Danny Michaels. All I had to do was get in a couple of good licks. And that's all I did. In hindsight, he was bigger than I was. I never had a chance to beat him. If he knew anything about fighting, he could have easily won, but clearly he didn't. I didn't either. I just kind of blindly threw some punches here and there and scrambled around a lot when I was on the ground and kicked and punched as best I could. And before I knew it, it was over and we were all walking home again, right? But I was smaller than him. He was supposed to win it. I wasn't supposed to get in some big hits. I was just supposed to get thrown on the ground and pummeled, right? Okay, here's my point. Israel's a big mess. Man, all they've been bragging about is how powerful they are. And I'm going Telegram, and I see like some guy come out of a little tunnel with like a bomb in his hand and run over to an Israeli tank and run back in the tunnel, and the tank blows up. You know, you go on Telegram and you're seeing videos of, you know, some Hamas guys looking out a window. You know, they pop out of a tunnel. They look out. They're looking around. There's Israeli soldiers wandering all around. They're kind of like, and you're like, holy crap! They don't even see this guy. He can just light them all up with, you know what I mean, with a machine gun, right? And so what happened? You're looking at it and you're like, man, kind of looks like to me, Hamas, they don't even have missiles. They don't have planes, air power. They have nothing but some light arms, and they're kind of punching back pretty good against this powerful army. The U.S. military's there, the Germans. Now the Brits said, oh, we're doing flyovers. The same NATO that just got their butt handed to them in Ukraine. Right? So they went up against a premier superpower with a record of kicking butt in Ukraine, and they got a record butt kicking in Ukraine. Well, that ain't good enough to them. Now they got to go to the rubble of Gaza. Oh, that's it. There's a bunch of civilians there that desperately need killing, and we're going to kill these civilians and take out Hamas. Hamas is kind of lighting them up. I'm not saying Hamas is winning, but I didn't have to beat up Danny Michaels. All I had to do was get in a good lick every now and then, and everybody was going to say I beat up Danny Michaels. They ain't got to win. All they got to do is get in a good lick every now and get it on video and send it to Telegram. And they are doing that well. They have, you talk about soft power, Hezbollah, right? We're seeing videos. Yes, look at this missile that we struck a Israeli base. And it's like, boom, holy crap, that's a heck of a strike, right? I don't even, for all I know, it could have been from a World War II movie. I don't know. But I tell you this much, they got some music in the background. They're showing some trees, maybe an antenna sticking up and a huge explosion. We don't know what that came from. Maybe it's Israel. Probably is. Maybe not. But all I'm saying is this. Israel's supposed to be the big dog, and the United States got a flotilla of ships floating around. The Houthis, the Ansar Allah, they're taking a helicopter, taking a ship every now and then, harassing the Red Sea. I mean, these guys don't have a lot of stuff, but they got a lot of fight in them, and they don't have to have a lot of stuff, and they don't have to win. The Houthis have just snapped the ship every now and then in non-commercial ships, fired some drones at the American ship, and that's a win. If you're the little guy, see, Russia really had to win because Russia was a big guy, big, strong guy, and Russia did what big, strong guys did. They knocked their opponents on their ass. Wherein the dynamic in the Middle East is the reverse. Not exactly the reverse, probably more like Annalena Baerbock would say it's 360 degrees away, you know, complete the spin, a complete revolution, right? But my point being is, now the U.S. war machine is going against the little guy. He ain't got to win. All he's got to do is kick you every now and then and cause a couple bruises, and they're causing some bruises. They are really good at soft power. Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. These people have gotten good. I'm watching video. They've edited the video. They put in circles at all kinds of things in the video. They put music behind the video. You know, it's like Rocky, boom, some Israelis blow up. You're like, man, that's a pretty good video. Geez, you know, I'll put it like this: the way the Marvel's movies have been flopping lately, they could do better than to call. They couldn't do any better than to call Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and ask them to come do the next movie for them, because what they got right now, you know, that sure ain't working so well. But my point being, they are fighting back violently. No matter whose side you're on, you got to say they're fighting. They're making good soft power moves. They're getting their press out. And the U.S. and the idiots that are along with it are making themselves look like fools by going after this really, really soft target and getting bloodied in a bloody nose doing it. And everybody around the world screaming and yelling. So it looks to me like the neocons, the neocons, they got ran out of Afghanistan. They're in the process of getting ran out of Ukraine, and things don't seem like it's going to be a whole lot better for them in the Middle East. So it looks to me like the point being, the Neocon war project has run aground, and it didn't just run aground by itself. You know, it got grounded by Putin. Really, the big thing that happened here was the Ukrainian conflict. The president of Russia made a decision that he was going to take a chance, to have a proxy war with the U.S., that if it went nuclear, he knew he had the ability to end the United States the same way the U.S. had the ability to end him. And he made sure that he reminded them of that occasionally and said, hey, our nuclear deterrent forces are on high alert. At the very beginning, the war started, and he said, our nuclear deterrent forces are on high alert. The message was clear. Don't try anything stupid. Don't forget, you ain't dealing with Iraq. You get dumb, you get dead. You act up, we'll end this thing. I ain't saying we won't get ended too, but we'll end it for you. So don't think you're dealing with Iraq or El Salvador or somebody. You play with us, it's a dangerous game you're playing. That's the message he made the first week. The Russians, one of the first things Putin said was, I'm putting my nuclear deterrent forces on high alert. The message was clear. Don't get froggy. Better stay clear. Yeah, we're going to fight Ukraine, but if you think that you're going to come in here and threaten our civilization, well, yeah, that ain't going to end well for you. And so he kept them at bay. He bared his teeth, as an animal will do. You know what I mean? He bared his teeth at him. He let him know, you come any closer, you're going to get torn to shreds. Is this what you want? And then he went on to slowly do his business, take care of business. And here we are, the end of the Neocon project. It's the end of the Neocon world domination project. It's over. It's over. You had to take out Russia in order to execute that plan. You can't take out Russia, and Russia has beaten you, and you're getting weaker and weaker, and Russia's getting stronger and stronger, and China's getting stronger. And a ship that it takes you a year to build, China builds in a week. It's a game. It's a game, set, and match. And now, I don't know if you know it, but China has been making it clear. China's getting froggy. China is now saying to the U.S. empire, look, here's the deal. Stop screwing around in Taiwan. Stop it. We're tired of it. We demand that you stop. I don't know that China's ready to take Taiwan, but I think China, they move slow. They know they don't have to act militarily, but I think China could do some things. For instance, I don't think they want to, but I think they could put heavy sanctions on Taiwan. You know, they could really make Taiwan's life miserable. They could put extremely heavy sanctions on Taiwan. They could put some nasty sanctions on the United States, some nasty ones, man. They could hurt us. I don't know that they want to do that, but I think they're getting to the point where they feel like the United States is brushing up too close. And let me add this. If you are China and you want to do something to brush back the United States, hey, they're in the process of losing a war in Ukraine. They're all caught up to hell in the Middle East. They're struggling with their bases, are getting attacked. The Houthis or Ansar Allah, Yemen, they're making their lives miserable when it comes to ships. That things just ain't going well. The Israelis won't listen to a word they said. Things ain't going. So if you're China, might be an opportune time to start a little dust up in the South China Sea, huh? You think might be a difficult time. They're kind of distracted and weak. This may be the time to put the pressure on them. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody. Let's go through. All right, we're going to go through. Okay. Evandro. Thank you, Evandro. All right, here we got something. I am Valentina says, will we ever pull out of this nosedive? I fear America as we know it is history. You're correct, and we won't. I mean, well, I put it like this. Our economy is going to crash in that we're not going to have the money. Bottom line is this. Within about a year and a half, 1 to 2 years, the debt, the price to service the U.S. debt will be so high that once we service the debt and pay for the military, there'll be nothing left for discretionary spending. We're within 2 years of the U.S. being able to do one thing: pay the debt, pay for the military, not a dime left for discretionary spending. How's that work? How's that work? That's a failed state. So we are 18 months away from being a failed state. And at that point, you're not going to be able to afford military anymore. You're not going to be able to do it. Vasil Beshkov, Trump ain't coming back. They will not let him. Perhaps a real January 6th this time should he win. Yeah, it's interesting thought, man, because they are determined to stop Trump from running because they know he'll probably win. Not that I'm any Trump fan or I think he's any, I think we got a broken, destroyed system. We need a revolution. Oh, like the Beatles said, right? Thanks a lot, Vivian. Appreciate that. Gotta have a revolution. Anoon says, I don't care what Scott says with his vile defense of WS. Zelensky to me will always be shoe shine boy. Oh, yeah. Is it Zelensky? I don't know. Yeah, that's all Zelensky. He's done. He's shoe shine boy Zelensky. I agree with you. He'll be lucky if they don't take him out back and allow him to look at the flowers. World War II daughter says, I love Critical Hour. Wish I found it sooner. Thanks a lot. I do the Critical Hour every day. Go to Rumble. And you can go to rumble.com, look for The Critical Hour. It's with me and Dr. Wilmer Leon. And follow us on Rumble. We have lots of good guests every day. Mark Labote is on there a lot. Latham Roof, lots and lots of people are on there. It's really great. So you know what I need to start doing? I need to start putting the Critical Hours Rumble thing in the what do you call it? The show notes, and put it out every now and then so everybody can get the Critical Hour on Rumble. That's my show that I do on Radio Sputnik, and me and Dr. Wilmer Leon. We've got a lot of good guests. You'll love it. We've got Margaret Kimberly tomorrow. I'm a big Margaret Kimberly fan. She's cool. All right, let's look on Rockfin. Bob Baker, Garland Nixon. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Yeah, somebody says, good to see you active after your vacation. Yeah, I was on vacation. I was gone last weekend. I went to brother Caleb Moff and his CPI USA, his what is it called? Center for Political Innovation. I got a T-shirt. He had something, and I was there. Scott Ritter was there. Jody Brar. It was wonderful. I had hung out with Scott Ritter. We had some great talks. So that was really, really wonderful. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget, everything's scrolling across the bottom if you can. Follow me on Telegram. I'm tossed off Twitter for right now. Of course, buymeacoffee.com. You can go on there and donate. My Cash App information is there. PayPal is available. Certainly, you understand Patreon. So if you can afford to help the channel, I appreciate it. Don't forget, go to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon and become a member. Even if you, it doesn't cost a dime. You can see all my stuff. So if they throw me off YouTube, I'm there. And if you can afford it, one of the things that they allow on Rockfin is subscribers. That's how they stay on. It's $14.99 a month. If you can afford to be a subscriber, you don't have to be. But if you can afford to be a subscriber and help the channel, I would appreciate it. But you don't have to. That's an option that keeps Rockfin going with no advertisement. So that's up to you. But make sure you go to rockfin.com and become at least a member, if not a subscriber. Peace. I'm out.